Good. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to the first meeting of the Wilson Science and Technology Forum for this new 2024-2025 season. We're going to lead off today with generative AI, and we have a very full agenda. So let me introduce the folks who have been instrumental in assembling our program. The program is an introduction and a test drive of generative AI. Now, Ron Smith has been integral to this. He is at Innovation Toronto. You've heard from Ron in the past. He has his finger on the pulse of technical innovation and was my inspiration for planning this meeting. Now, Marv Goldschmitt wears many hats, and he's today here on behalf of AIUpdate. His long history of leadership in high-tech, executive management, and consulting in the computer industry, and has worked with, among others, the neural network company Nestor, with IBM, Lotus Development, and Kodak. And Marv has provided the vision and design for what we're going to hear today in our agenda. Paula McConnell is also part of our team. She and her colleagues at Seva Digital are AI practitioners, and they have executed the design that Marv put together, and they've done it superbly well. Frankly, I've never seen technology take shape as quickly and as well as UPA, which you're going to hear much more about during the course of this morning. Paula and her team have been truly spectacular, and I thank them for all of their effort in pulling this together. So, Wilson Forum folks, we're fortunate to have our guest with us today. And without delay, I want to turn the floor over to Marv. Marv, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Let me get my screen looking correctly.
Yeah.
Am I shared so that I can share my screen?
I don't see it yet.
Okay. Let me pop something up.
There you go.
We start. Okay.
Starting screen sharing, yeah.
Give me a second while I technology. Not all the technology in the world is under our control, as you
exactly.
noticed. So I want to get this up and running correctly. Get this out of the way so I can find the button. The button was hid to go full screen. There we go.
There you go. You're all set.
All right. This was the tough technical part. Ron, thanks for the introduction. Thank you for inviting me. And Ron, I've got to add a little bit to the background that Ron gave you about me. I've been sort of on the cutting edge, somewhat by accident. I think of myself as an accidental tourist in the computer world. But I ran the third oldest computer store in the world back in the late 70s, Burlington, Mass, where a product you may have heard of called VisiCalc was actually being developed in my store. We were the support for them, and I sold the first 100 spreadsheets ever sold in the world. That was part of the deal for helping them. So I sold the first VisiCalcs, and 3 years later, I was the number 7 at Lotus Development, if you know that company, and I was responsible for every aspect of the introduction of 123, which was considered to be the first killer app of the computer industry. I have been fortunate to be at the leading edge of a lot of new technologies, but I also will give myself the credit of a little perspective because my actual training is not in computers or anything like that. I'm a psychologist. And so from day one, I was very interested in what this meant to us as individuals and to us as a society. And to be honest, bigger than that, us as a species. When I say this, I mean the whole introduction of computers into people's daily lives. So with that perspective, one aspect, Ron mentioned that I worked for a company called Nestor. Nestor in 1986 was founded by Nobel Prize winner Leon Cooper at Brown University. He won the Nobel Prize with others for superconductivity. and it was the first neural networking company in the world. Neural networking is a basis, as we'll see in a second, of a lot of AI, a lot of artificial intelligence. So I sort of come to my point of view with a lot of background. I'll probably fill in a little bit, just to give you some substance to why I've come to some conclusions. If I only had one screen to work with, and yes, I do have more, there's a slide deck, and I will try to be as parsimonious about getting through it as possible, because this is really about an experience. We want people to experience this today, but there has to be some level setting. If there was only one screen, this is the one I'd use. And if we didn't accept that line, that the reality is AI is in all of our lives today, 24 hours ago, as of last night, we'd all accept it. Why? Because Oprah did a primetime show on AI. When Oprah does a primetime show on something, you know everybody knows about it. So it's everywhere. It's, our dogs, when they order from Amazon, get a suggestion for what to order next. That's AI. But where are we in this process? What does it mean? It's everywhere. You'll see a lot of quotes at the bottom of a lot of the slides. I think they're very relevant quotes. But one from the writer William Gibson is probably as on target as any. And this is already here. The future's here, but it's not evenly distributed. And what the team that has been working on this is trying to do is to change that last statement a bit and try to help more evenly distribute awareness and understanding and sensitivity to AI in our life. This is likely to be, I say likely, in my own heart, I don't even have a qualifier, it is the most significant invention in the history of mankind. I'm far from the only one saying that. It behooves us to be participants, but that is something we'll discuss. So today's agenda is the word brief. Those of you who are on this who know me know that brief and Marv usually do not work in the same sentence, but I will try to be brief. I will try to get through a relatively thick amount of information quickly, because what we want to do is get you to UPA. But why am I laying this out? Why? We need a shared platform. We need a shared understanding. We need to know how we got here, where we are, where we're going, and what we're trying to do is maybe steer the where we're going a little bit. As I said, there are going to be quotes at the bottom of most of these screens. Not everybody, as a matter of fact, you'll see quite a lot of support for this. AI, the merger of computers and people, is not something that is a new idea. It didn't come out 2 years ago when ChatGPT all of a sudden hit people's face. Oh, here's AI. Albert Einstein. Excuse me? Somebody's not on mute.
That would be me.
Okay. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the history of AI, what it means, a little bit of explanation of technology, trying to keep it as light as possible. I'm not going to hit every point. If anybody's interested in the PDF of the slide deck, I'll be more than happy to give it to you afterwards. This is, as you know, being recorded, so it'll be available if you want to review it later from the Wilson Forum. After that, we're going to go into UPA. What is UPA? Why are we doing it? UPA is, I'll jump the headline. UPA is an AI agent that has a purpose of introducing people to what AI is. It's actually an agent designed to teach you about itself. And we're going to have a live demo with, hopefully, we have 3 volunteers. Unfortunately, there are parts of using this, because we're actually using ChatGPT as the foundation what we're doing. Parts of it are a little hard to get onto people's phones. That's the hardest part of this whole thing. Using the app is not. So we have one volunteer, and we hopefully have three who will actually be up and running, and you'll be able to see them have fundamentally their first AI experience. This can be available to anybody. And then what we'd really like from you is your input. Have a discussion, at least at first, about what we're doing, get a sense of validation. You are the first people to see this. 2 weeks ago, this did not exist. To Ron's point about the rapid development, I'm been doing this for 45 years, and I'm blown away with both the timing and the quality of work that you will see today. Yet it is still just a prototype. It is not necessarily close to the final thing we want to provide, but it should suggest everything. Okay. So Ron gave a little bit of introduction. The team's actually about 4 months ago, Ron invited Ron Smith and me to do something today on AI. It started out being more like a lecture. I know it sounds like one now too, but this is such a dynamic space, and I'm sort of an action-oriented person. I get involved in things. Just talking about it wasn't enough, and I've been racked for a while about this incredibly accelerating train and what we can do to understand it, and more importantly, what we can do to get ready to adapt to it and maybe even change its direction. And I don't mean, when I say we, I don't mean the people like me who've been in this for 40 years. I mean people who are going to be affected by that. And that happens to just be about 8 billion people. So how do we democratize it? We developed a small think tank. We talked over and over again. I've been working on an idea for a while, which is really formulated into UPA, and I got a lot of support for it. I said, great, want to do this. I don't know how to do it. I do tend to bend the ear of my friends. And I was talking to a number of them, and one of them, Sandra Holzman, who's on the phone with us, teaches at NYU, is an old friend of mine. She goes back to kindergarten and the Bronx High School of Science. And she said, you have to meet my friend, Paula McConnell. So Paula and I exchanged a few emails, and I think we went, oh, wait a minute. This is somebody I need to actually talk to. And we started talking, and she has a company that does implementation of AI and didn't just grasp what I was hinting at, but said, oh, we can do this. That was all of what, Paula, about a month ago, 6 weeks at most. And she has a team, including her husband, David, and Jay McRain, who's with us, who's actually lives in Saskatchewan. And that team put together what you're going to see today. All right. So when Ron sent out that first email of asking for volunteers, within an hour, we got a response from Tom, who's on the call, basically saying, guys, this is not new. And I just had a great smile, because the screen you're seeing, I wrote about 3 weeks ago, well before that email. And my first point is, AI is not new. For a lot of us, it's new. For a lot of people in the world, it's new. But in the world of in the computer world, it didn't just parallel the rest of computing. It actually was the reason the rest of computing got started. The earliest computer innovators were looking to create artificial intelligence, and I'll substantiate that in a moment. But artificial intelligence is very difficult to justify to the rest of the world, and computing did not initially get major focus. And I'm going back to the early 40s, when really computing, the digital computer as we know it today, vacuum tubes at the time, was initiated by the Defense Department for a very simple reason. During World War II, they were creating new artillery very rapidly. But in order to use new artillery in the field, which had different characteristics from older, how to aim it was a challenge. And what they did was they literally created these books. And they did it using computers, except at the time, computers were women, generally during the war, sitting in warehouses with Monroe calculators and pieces of paper, and hundreds of them would be going through all the variables like temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, height, range, all these things to create a cookbook for the soldiers to be able to aim the artillery. That was taking a long time. Sometimes new artillery sat in a warehouse for 3 to 6 months because there was no manual to say how to use it. And the government realized they needed to do it. They'd heard about the idea of computing and they funded it. That was the original purpose that developed what we use today as computers. But there were geniuses back then doing it who, yes, that's a very practical use of computing, but they were already thinking about artificial intelligence. So the first economically viable direction for computing was what I call behavioral computing. It's computing where we say to something, just like we did back with ENIAC and Colossus during World War II, do what those women who are sitting in a warehouse all day long and making mistakes and taking a long time, do that faster, better, more accurately for us. In other words, offload jobs that we're doing right now. And basically, that's what we've applied. What most of us have experienced as computing. It's been very successful. But if you think about what we use computing for, including this, they're extensions of things we always did before. Spreadsheets were spreadsheet calculators and paper, so it was accounting. Drafting was, rulers and pen on on paper. That went into the computer, word processing. All these things were things we did before. That was the major development of computing, and that's what we think of as computing. And again, I'm going to direct you, I won't read the quotes at the bottom, but I suggest you do read them. There are a couple I'll stop at because they're important. This has permeated, affected everything. That clearly did. That took over the world. At the same time, people did not give up on cognitive computing or artificial intelligence. It's a very different animal. Instead of trying to get computers to do what we did but better, unfortunately, I can see that quote is running off the bottom of the screen. We were asking it to think like us, but better. Now think about that for a moment. That's a pretty dramatic statement. It's one thing to have something like a tool do for us, a plow is a whole lot better than somebody with a shovel. So we develop things to make our lives easier, but to do what we did. Now we're saying, or a lot of these early people were saying, no, this can think like us. This can take over our thinking. And that sounded really science fiction. And a lot of people didn't take it seriously, but a lot of people did. So we went through a lot of phases with AI. The first one, which now is called GoFi, good old-fashioned AI. I know that's snickering and it's not my invention. If you do a search on the web, that's what the people in the industry call what was the first major phase. And the first major phase was called knowledge-based. Generally speaking, you may have heard the term expert system, where what they were doing was codifying the knowledge of an expert and making that available to people. Simple example, a real example. The best ER doctors in the world were interviewed by people who are called knowledge engineers, who could take that person's knowledge and put it into a computer with rules, if-then rules. So as an example, if at 2:00 on Sunday morning in a small ER room in a community hospital, a first-year resident has a patient with strange symptoms, he could go over to the computer and type in, I've got a 24-year-old febrile, disoriented person with low blood pressure. He didn't know what to do. But the expert system, which have captured the previous knowledge of the better ER docs, would come back and say, if this, then run this test. You got this result, then look for this type of symptomology. It was a way of encapsulating and sharing knowledge. It was extremely transparent. If something went wrong, you could go back and fix it. You knew how it got to its result. And it had its heyday, basically in the 80s. But it was expensive. There weren't that many application cases, and it was hard to maintain. And it sort of started to drift away. During that time, though, a lot of investment was being made, a lot of research at places like MIT, Caltech, other places, and new forms of AI were being developed. It went from being rules-based, logic, knowledge-based, to being more statistically based. And this started in the mid-90s, where they started saying, instead of us giving it rules and telling it what to do, why don't we give it information, let it figure out its own rules, and come up with its own results? That's fundamentally where we are now. We're in that second phase. And that phase went from Bayesian methodologies to transformers, which I'll talk about in a moment. But those new techniques changed the nature of AI. They didn't really hit the world too much until something I'll show you in a moment in 1996. But it was developing and set the foundation for what we're experiencing with things like ChatGPT. But that's not where we're ending. Now, before I go where we are moving into, one thing that's very important to know about statistically based AI, it's opaque. What do I mean by that? We can't figure out how it comes to its conclusions. We don't know how it works. Think of it analogically to the brain. We know what there is, we know how they're connected, but we really don't know how it works. That's pretty much the way that AI works today, statistically based. And that's a challenge. That's a problem. And you hear about it. You hear these things why did it come to that conclusion? It hallucinated. These are the things we're hearing. That's real. And challenge is we don't know how to go back recursively and figure out how it did what it did or fix it for the future. But while that's happening, we're also hitting a third wave. The statistically based phase of AI was really about what Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winning economist and psychologist, in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, called type 1 thinking. Type 1 thinking is reactive thinking. It's how we all basically survived. There's something, react to it, fight or flight, or somebody says something and you react to it, emotionally or intellectually, whatever. Type 2 thinking slow, is more analytical, more reasoning, more conceptual. We're entering a new phase, which is that third wave. And it's futuristic. How futuristic? 2 weeks. Why do I say 2 weeks? On Monday, OpenAI announced a project that's going to be included in ChatGPT in 2 weeks called Strawberry. You may recall that last fall, and I'm going to try to accelerate, I'm looking at the clock, Sam Altman was fired from OpenAI. The reason he was fired from OpenAI with Project Strawberry, which at the time was called Project Q Star, the technical founder of OpenAI, Ilya Sutskever, went to the board and said, we've got something very dangerous here, and Sam's going to ship it. And that's why Sam got fired, but Sam took over again within a couple of days. That Strawberry, that thinking, that conceptual, that reasoning, that type 2 thinking is going to start appearing in many systems this week. Strawberry is not alone. There's an AI scientist project that is real, that's from the University of Oxford and Sakana in Japan. Grok from Twitter X is showing signs of that. AlphaZero from Google. We are moving into a new stage of AI. What does this all mean? I'm going to go over this really quickly to save time. This is a brief history of AI. It goes back to 1936 when Alan Turing, who's considered the father of computing, published a paper on the Turing machine, which was the basis of computing. it didn't take long for people to start thinking, how am I going to use it? Well, let's make it think like a human. And McCullough and Pitts in 43 published a paper where the idea of neural perceptrons, neural networks, modeling the brain effectively was already proposed. And by 1950, Alan Turing proposed the Turing test, which you might have heard of. It's a test that's still going on today to find the point where you can't distinguish between a human and a computer in response. And we had many stages, including chatbots in the 60s at MIT, of a lot of the things you've seen today already emerging 60, 70 years ago. This is not new. But when it really hit public...
Which, no, it's not taken alternate Tuesdays, right?
Hello. Somebody's not on mute.
I got it.
Okay. 1996, you probably recall, IBM announced that they had a computer that could beat Garry Kasparov, the world's chess champion, and it did. That woke a lot of people up to AI. It hit some popular knowledge, but the more important thing is it created a lot of investment, because that was the first time when statistical AI and, to a certain degree, expert system AI, knowledge-based AI, were beginning to merge and becoming real. And a lot of investment went into it. And venture firms, companies, tech companies started saying, we got to be on top of this. And yeah, the public awareness of it dropped, but not the development and back end. And in fact, in the early 2000s, it started affecting our lives in a way I'll show you in a second, but we didn't know it. The real breakthrough that people now say, yeah, that was when I became aware of, was in 2011, when I was on IBM's Data Governance Council, which set policy for the use of data for IBM and their customers. And I was in charge of privacy and security while Watson was being developed. Watson was designed to win on Jeopardy, which it did. I won't go into the details. That was a monumental $4 billion task, which almost failed. But they won, and they beat Ken Jennings. That woke everybody up to the reality of it. But yet there was still not that available to most people, not something that really said, here I am. That changed in our industry with the publication of a paper in 2017 on transformers. When you hear GPT, that stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. What is a transformer? It's giving artificial intelligence a sense of self-awareness, self-attention, where it can assess itself, assess its answers before it gives it. That's what we experienced with GPT. Okay, so now we're just seeing what everybody saw 70 years ago, except we're now seeing it in reality. And again, I direct you to the quotes. Ray Kurzweil, you've heard of him. He's never been wrong. I'm not a big fan of his, to be honest, but he's never been wrong in his predictions. And there's a bet, a matter of fact, out there that he made in 2002 with Mitch Kapor, my boss, founder of Lotus, for $20,000 that matures in 2029, that artificial intelligence will by then demonstrate human intelligence. It appears that Ray is going to win that bet. Okay. But we've been the proverbial fraud. For the last 20 plus years, after Deep Blue and the investments, AI started penetrating our lives, but we didn't know it. It was affecting things like how our credit ratings were done, hiring. 95%, 15 years ago, of resumes submitted from places like Monster or other sites were screened by computers and filtered out before a human saw them. In fact, I started a company 10 years ago specifically to counteract that. But we also individually saw it when we were in Amazon, like the dog. People who bought this, bought that. Netflix, YouTube. You saw this movie, you might like this one. Suggestion. Google Ads. We even interacted with it directly by talking to it with Alexa and Siri, but it didn't really register. So we were like the proverbial frog on a stove, tepid water in the fire was put on and we started boiling slowly. That's what I call coming in the back door. November 30th, 2022, ChatGPT was announced. Within a month, there were 1 million users. Everybody became aware of it. Larry Summers was talking about it within a week as being the cognitive risk. It was coming after cognitive jobs within a week of it being announced. That's what we've experienced. Everything that is in the popular press, everything that motivated Oprah for her show last night has happened in the last 21 months. It's just been going on for close to 80 years. Okay. So where are we now? We're in a hype cycle. And that hype cycle is going to have winners and losers. We've been there before. We were there, 20 years ago with the .com fiasco, except it wasn't a failure. It's just some companies failed, some investments failed. But ultimately, the internet was pretty successful, wouldn't you say? We're going to have some what I call anticipation. If you set the anticipation level high enough, the expectation level, no matter what you accomplish, if it's below that, it's going to be viewed as disappointment. And there's going to be some of that. But that's like a wave on the ocean. The ocean is still there. The trends are there. The reality of the technology is there. And it's affecting every one of us. And most people think that what was announced, GPT, that's what AI is. No, it's one aspect of AI. AI is this huge Lego set of things we snap together. It's not one thing. But this is an important point. I'm going to stop for a second and let you read Elon Musk's quote, because that is critical. And we can't control this. I'll talk about that in a moment. That's a pretty mind-boggling statement, wouldn't you say? Okay. So now I call it the fallacy of controlling AI. Fundamentally for two broad reasons. To control something, certainly something as broad-ranging as this, so it's international, if you will, as this, affecting everywhere and affecting every aspect of our lives, people have to agree on what we're trying to control and what we want to accomplish. I would like somebody to give me an example of where we have done that worldwide with any real effect in the history of humanity. So I challenge that we can even do it, that we understand what we'd want to do with these things. Right? But even if we were able to agree, we don't even have a technical definition of AI. It is all these little pieces that snap together. Sometimes use this piece, sometimes use that piece. And regulation historically isn't about the future anyway. AI is about the future. Regulations about what happened in the past. As a matter of fact, almost all the regulations, including California SB 1047 that's sitting on Gavin Newsom's desk right now, it's unclear whether he's going to sign it to control some aspects of AI. They're looking backwards at the problems of social media, cybersecurity, privacy, bullying, fake news. Those are last year's problems, not the future's problems. So we can't agree. We don't have policy. We don't do that. We can't control. But for the moment, assume we actually could do that. We have another problem. We can't turn the technology off. There isn't a technology to turn off. There's no off button. The only off button, as a friend of mine who I believe is on this call, who's at Cornell, would be to turn off all the electricity in the world. Maybe we'd do that. Okay.
Marv, can I interrupt for just a moment?
Yeah.
I've got a note on chat that some people may not be able to see the screen. Am I correct, or are we all able to see Marv's screen? Anyone have a problem? Okay, no problem. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
So most people have no idea what AI is. And you wouldn't know the name Ilya Lekowski, but he's been paralleling my concerns of AI since I've been very concerned I've been involved in 40 years, but for the last 25 years, I've been very concerned about what it means and how we'd end up where we are today. Okay. So what changed? Fundamentally, three things changed. that made this possible, this explosion we're in now. One is incredible, massive amount of computing power. And that's doubling. Moore's law says that computing power doubles every 18 months at half the price. And he's been right about that, Gordon Moore, since the 50s. He was a founder of Intel. And everybody keeps thinking it's going to fail, and somehow it continues. And we add new capabilities on, like quantum computing, that are just going to continue to accelerate it. But if you have a large processor and it's not processing anything, what's it doing? We've had this explosion of data. The internet did that. Everything is digitized, whether it's Facebook or Wikipedia or every report, every study, every news report. All that's grist for the mill for AI. And then we had the introduction of transformers and associated three-letter, I call them TLAs, three-letter acronyms of pieces that we snap together in AI. That was the breakthrough. So what does that mean in terms of our lives? What can this do for us, and what could it do to us? What are the risks and rewards? And I might be very blunt. We don't know. We have no idea. Okay. There's a lot of people talking about it. A lot of people have opinions. A lot of people have gut level feelings about it, but they're at the extremes. Ray Kurzweil, who is the head, he is considered one of the today's geniuses of AI. Bill Gates says he's the smartest man in the world. He's the head of future planning and futurism for Google. He, in the 60s, developed an AI system that could read text and read it out so somebody could hear it. He did it specifically for Stevie Wonder so that Stevie Wonder could read. He thinks we're heading to a utopia. He's the one who predicted that by 2029 we'd have AGI, artificial general intelligence. We're pretty close to it. That's beating the Turing test of Alan Turing. So he thinks this is wonderful. The other extreme is a fellow named Geoffrey Hinton, and he's far from alone, who thinks this is going to cause the extinction of humanity. Now, why should we care about Geoffrey Hinton? Geoffrey Hinton in 1972 dedicated his career to the idea that neural networks could function the way the brain does. Or maybe another way of saying about it is that the brain functions the way he thought neural nets worked. And he was considered a joke. He got no funding, got a couple of positions, turned out to be right. He's considered the godfather of AI, along with two other guys. And he quit Google, where he was basically the head of AI, a year ago. He's 75 now, 76, when he realized that this could mean the extinction of mankind. And he said, which bothered me, I didn't think this would happen for another 30 years. Now, none of us really did, but he was creating it, and he knew he was creating this risk. So I'm not giving him a pass, but we have this range of opinions of where we're going. Now, there's a promise that this is going to solve all our problems, and it already has solved all the problems. Trust me, we wouldn't be getting COVID shots without AI. Within a month of the decoding of the COVID genome, we had test vaccines. That was all done by AI. But there's the other side, and that's the human angst. What do people mean in a world where they're no longer the alpha problem solvers? They're no longer the alpha thinkers, creators. What does it mean to be human? That's a big existential question. It's an economic question too. If these things can do things that we do cheaper, faster, more reliably, where do the humans fit economically? We're hearing a lot about that. Now, there's another extreme, which is that we're going to hit the robot apocalypse, the AI robot apocalypse. I'm not a big fan of that one. But there are people who say that. Now, how's it going to play out? We don't know. Okay? But I don't think we can wait around to find out because, again, I suggest you read, the bottom line. Stephen Hawking He felt like he agreed with Hinton that we could be at the end. And by the way, there is this, I'm a member of the AAAI, which is the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence. And a survey was done just about 2 years ago of the members asking their PDOOM score. PDOOM was, what percentage do you think this will cause the extinction of humanity? The range was up to 99% among some people. Elon Musk was at 30 to 40%. Jeffrey Hinton was at 20%. My only question to people is very simple. If you're standing about to go onto an airplane in Logan, you're at the gate and there are people standing there with signs saying, we designed this plane, we built it, and there's a 10% chance it's going to crash before you get to Chicago. Are you getting on that plane? We've all gotten on that plane. So what do we do about it? Let's assume all these things that we just laid out is true. We can't control it. It's going to continue to grow. Not only will bad people use it, but it could do things on its own because it will have that conceptualization and thinking capability. You'll see it in the press. Look up Strawberry as of this week. So what can we do about it? Back to William Gibson. The future is here, but it's not evenly distributed. The idea that I had was realizing that nobody is talking to the 8 billion people on this planet in a way they can understand what it is so that they can become participants. I think everybody has a right to, and that's what we're trying to address. So what's the problem? When I realized that nobody was trying to do it, or I thought nobody was trying to do it, I started looking around for people who were doing it, companies who were saying, hey, we're going to try to introduce people to AI so they know what it is. Nobody's doing it. I was shocked. Everybody who's making these things view us as either customers who's willing to pay them $20 a month to use their tool, or as inventory they can sell to advertisers, or inventory that'll produce more data for them. But they're not looking at us as people whose lives are going to be changed. And they also exclude us by those things I said, TLAs, three-letter acronyms. Here are just a few. I can tell you what every one of those are, and there are probably another 100 that I could list. That's how we talk to each other in the industry. What use is that to most people? And the most important quote I've got is the one at the bottom. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, the guy who put this in our laps. This is what he said in 2016. Read it and think about it for 10 seconds. He didn't want to have happen to him what he's doing to us. So what is UPA? UPA is an extremely simple idea. It's an agent that will say to you, hi, I'm AI. Let me teach you a little bit about me. It will talk with you. Upas is in Sanskrit, means the one next to you. It's usually said Upaguru. Guru is teacher, like in Hebrew, rabbi is teacher. We think of it as master, but in this case, it simply means the teacher next to you. And that's what we're trying to develop, is a tool where everybody will have a teacher available. On one of these, there are 4.8 billion of these in people's hands in the world. Yes, we've had some challenge today getting the GPT app on people's phones, but if they can get it on their phone, everybody can have access to UPA. That's our goal. But we don't know if we're going to be there. It's designed for the naive user. What we mean by naive user is somebody who has not experienced AI. I've had many PhDs I've been introducing this to. They have no idea about AI. They're far from naive people. It's just this isn't their focus. So it's a simple on-ramp to get people introduced. We don't look to be the long-term portal for people to use AI. We just want to get people. The way I view it is very simple. even those who know about AI, most of them are like people reading a review of a restaurant in the Globe. Yeah, I've read it has great food, it's excellent pad thai or whatever. They've never gone and eaten the food. I see UPA as guys standing outside or gals standing outside a restaurant with a platter in their hand with sample food and some toothpicks and say, try it. You don't want to keep on going. That's fine. You taste it. You don't like it. Fine. You find it interesting. The maitre d' is waiting for you. That's it. That's what UPA. We believe that in less than a 10-minute experience, somebody will go, I get it. Let's find out. So I'm going to turn this over now to Paula, who has been leading the development team. And we've got hopefully 3 volunteers who are up and running. We know we have 1 that's up and running, who is actually going to experience UPA for the first time with all of us watching. So, Paula, I'm sorry I went so long.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Marv. When Marv approached us, there's something special about Seva when we approach a solution design or software design, is that we do it human first. We focus on the human-technology relationship. So when he came to us and said, is this even possible? Can we get to the aha goal? We thought, yes, because what we're going to do is use methodologies from human-centered design, backwards design, which is an educational curriculum design, and human-computer interaction research to create the journey. And we use the simplest possible method to do that by creating the custom GPT, which is a little app on top of the entire infrastructure. So we also did random user testing in 2 environments, learned some very interesting things. And that's all I'm going to tell you, because I would like you to have reflections about what you think this is. So are my volunteers queued up? I'm going to give you some tips. Turn off your Bluetooth on your phone. That helps. I'd like you to speak clearly, and it helps to keep your responses under to like 30 seconds to a minute. If it talks over to you, let it respond. And if it does not have the question correct, you can ask, please repeat the question. Wait for UPA to finish responding before you, and turn up your phone's volume. And when you have UPA, when it's talking, put it up as close to your microphone as possible so we don't get any interaction with background noise. And Marv, you must have put this in. You must have
I added that last one.
All right.
That's fun. I wouldn't necessarily say. Let me make one other point. This is the first live demo of this, guys. We'll see how well it all works.
Yeah.
We've done many user tests, but this is the first time UPA's been on show. So our arcane question is really good, but also feel free to have a very robust conversation with it. Think of it as you are having a conversation with a friend. You're having a conversation with your UPA. So who do we have coming up first? Would that be Bob? I have names. I'm not sure I have them in order.
Well, here's the question.
I think Eddie was all primed, and I'm not sure about Bob.
All right then.
Yeah, I don't know that we. This is a quick survey, people.
Yeah.
Pete and Bob, were you able to get up and running?
Bob was not. We're not able to log in for some reason.
I was there. UPA X, UPA Z, and I'm looking at the choice.
So we have Pete and we have.
Yes,
Eddie.
I'm.
One suggestion to Bob I had problems because I was actually logged in under my own email. So you have to log out of your own email before you can sign into the demo.
This is cockpit error. This is early stage error. Once we're finished with this, nobody's going to have a challenge getting started.
I'm on an iPhone, and it worked for me.
Let me suggest that we start with Eddie, since Eddie was up and running yesterday, and I'll just turn it over to you two.
Okay, we do need to enable, let's turn off screen sharing because we need to see Eddie's face. And actually, Marv, you brought up a good point that I just glossed right over. This is a proof of concept prototype, which means all we're doing is answering Marv's question. Can we do this? Is this possible? So we'll let you be the judge of that. Okay, Eddie, are you ready?
I guess I am. What am I supposed to do?
So what I'd like you to do is click on the little headphones right down here and ask. Now I see you yourself are wearing headphones, so it's quite possible we're not. Oh, we should hear. Okay, never mind me. So click
I
on the
don't see the
headphones.
headphone. I'm sorry.
I think
Oh,
you
I
may
see it. Yes, yes.
I'm sorry, you
Okay.
know what? Go to. I skipped ahead.
I got it.
I'd like
I
you
got
to
it.
try version X. Go
Okay,
to
it's
pick version
connecting
X.
and it's listening.
All right, go ahead and click on or press the headphones and just say, "Hi, Upa."
Discuss further.
I'm sorry, it's actually talking to me while you're talking, so I couldn't hear what you just said.
So now
It's already.
we're going to shut up and Eddie's going to take over.
If there was anything specific.
Okay, so all you need to do is say, "Hi, Upa."
Discuss further. Would you like me to repeat anything or clarify?
It's talking to me and I can't stop it. Hang on, I'm going to turn off my headphones.
All right, that's probably a good idea. Ask Upa, please start over.
Stop it temporarily.
Can you mute, please? I think it muted.
I don't have the ability.
Okay. Ask Upa, please start over and say hello.
Hello. Hello.
Know which system is doing the talking? Maybe I can help guide you through stopping it.
I don't know if you can hear it, but I can't seem
No,
to.
actually, can you hold it
Hello.
a little closer to the microphone so we can hear it?
Hello.
I can't hear anything on your end, but it sounds like you're dealing with something tricky. If it's one of your systems, maybe try a reset or unplugging it temporarily. Or if it's a bot, maybe check for a command that stops its responses. Do you recall what triggered it to start talking?
No.
I don't think the microphone is turned on. I think that's the problem.
Oh.
That makes sense since I can't hear what's going on.
Yes.
The microphone isn't on. You might want to check the settings on your device or the app you're using.
Let
Do
me
you
check.
want to troubleshoot how to turn the microphone on?
Yes.
Okay, Dave is going to connect with you, so we'll move on. Who is?
We'll come back to you, Eddie.
Tablet or computer?
Smartphone.
And is there a specific app you're trying to use the microphone with?
Bob, was it Bob who's ready next? This happens, guys.
I'm ready. Pete's ready.
All right,
Pete's
let's
ready.
mute Eddie. David's doing some
Eddie.
technical support in the background. All right, Eddie, are you ready?
No, I think it's Pete.
Not quite ready. I'm not
Pete.
sure what's going on with the microphone.
Once
Okay.
it's
sorry.
down, feel free to circle back.
We're going to put you on mute and set that up. So I guess, Pete, you're up next?
Yes.
All right, then. I would like you to choose version X. Now, the reason we have two versions is that because the custom GPT is fairly simple in what we're able to do, we couldn't meet our entire goal unless we split Upa
Sorry,
in half.
which version?
I'd
X.
like you to try version X,
X.
who is affectionately known as Max.
X, right?
Yeah.
Like X-ray.
Yes, X like X-ray.
Okay.
And then you go ahead and push the headphones and say, "Hi, Upa."
Hi, Upa. How are you? Hello.
When you for a second, hold up your phone so I can see what you've got because you may not be quite on the right page. I can see how you get confused. Just hold it up for a second. I can't see it. You're off screen. Okay, raise it up a bit. Raise it up a bit. Okay, you see those? What you need to do is go back to the UPA X. Go back up to the two little dashes. You can take it away. See the two dashes on the corner. Select UPA X.
UPA X.
Upa X.
I have to explore. Oh,
Folks, you're seeing real-time work here.
explore GTPX.
You're going to see one that says UPA X, and it has a robot in a blue circle.
So explore GPTX, right?
Now,
Or
I'm going
chat
to make a
GPT.
suggestion in Paula. We're going to make a little modification here.
Sure.
I am going to become the volunteer.
Oh, right.
All right. So folks, what I'm doing is I'm loading up ChatGPT in my system. If you can see me, you're seeing that screen. That's what somebody will see.
Mm-hmm.
And now,
I see. If you're showing this to someone, it's important to remember how the screen should guide their interaction. What do you want to highlight about the experience?
hi, Upo, can you tell me something about AI?
Hello, I'm Upa. AI, or artificial intelligence, is technology that allows machines to learn and perform tasks like humans. What interests you about AI?
Well, I'd like to know what it can do for me.
AI can help with a lot. It can automate tasks, provide personalized recommendations, analyze data quickly, and even assist with creative projects. What's something you'd like AI to help you with?
I don't know. Teach me something.
Let's start with something fun. What are your hobbies or interests? I can
Photography.
show you how AI can connect with them.
Photography.
Got it. Let's get back to you. Would you like to explore how AI could enhance one of your hobbies or interests?
Very much, specifically photography and macro photography.
Awesome. AI can help photographers in many ways. For macro photography, AI can assist in enhancing image quality, stacking focus for sharpness, and even suggesting editing techniques. Would you like to try a creative demo, like generating custom ideas for photo shoots?
Absolutely, that sounds like fun.
Great. How about I generate some creative macro photography ideas for you?
Sure.
Give me a theme or subject you're interested in, and I'll suggest something unique.
I like colorful insects on colorful flowers, very close up.
That's a fantastic choice. Here's a fun idea. Capture a vibrant insect like a ladybug on a multicolored flower during golden hour. Use backlighting to highlight the insect's details and colors. For an added challenge, try focus stacking to get every tiny detail sharp. What do you think? Want to dive deeper into editing tips or camera settings?
No, but that's a great start. I don't really know much about AI. It scares me sometimes.
I understand. AI can feel a bit overwhelming. It's okay to feel that way. Would you like to explore how AI can be used safely or how it can support creativity like in photography?
I'd like to know a little more about safety.
AI safety is important. Most AI systems are designed with guidelines to prevent misuse, like protecting your privacy and ensuring data security. You can control how much data AI accesses, and many tools prioritize ethical use. Does that help ease some concerns? Or would you like to dive into a specific safety topic?
At this point, I think that's enough. Can I show
Glad
you
that was
some other?
helpful. Now that you've explored a bit, what do you think of AI so far? Anything stand out to you?
Yeah, you're very friendly and you're responsive, and you seem to know a lot about a lot of things.
Marv, I have a suggestion.
Thank you. I'm glad you feel that way. Our goal is to educate the world about AI. Can you help us share the message?
Sure. What can I do?
Awesome. If you were introducing me to a friend, how would you describe me?
A brilliant.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
I'm sorry. You're a brilliant companion in my hand. I don't understand you, but I know you're important and I know you can help me. And I think you probably can do that for other people.
That's a wonderful description. Thank you. I'm glad I could help, and I hope others will feel the same.
Sorry that I had to jump in, but we were just having technical issues. That's
Yeah.
how.
Well, let me add a personal dimension to this, Marv. As we were planning this whole process, Marv and Paula and I got together, and I did a test run myself on UPA. And I wanted to look at two things. I wanted to look at something that was technical interest to me and something that was personal interest to me. So some of you will perhaps remember during our conversations in the forum, I have mentioned to you the history of the high-strength steel fasteners that were used to repair the Bay Bridge in California. You may remember a little bit about this history. The fasteners were actually constructed of high-strength, quench-tempered steel. They're very strong, but they're very sensitive to hydrogen. And if hydrogen has ingress to these fasteners, they will break. Sometimes the stress from manufacturing, even before they're put in service, will cause them to break in the field. So I was amazed when I learned that those fasteners were actually galvanized. Now, to an engineer, galvanized steel means that the steel, if it's exposed, if there's any of the steel exposed to the atmosphere and it's in contact with zinc, which is the galvanized layer, the zinc will preferentially oxidize and it will make the steel a cathode, which produces hydrogen on the steel surface. Well, I was absolutely stunned to learn that the designers and fabricators of the repairs on the Bay Bridge use galvanized high-strength steel. And I was just stunned by that. So I started talking to UPA.
What's on your mind?
And and I asked the question, is UPA listening?
Oh, actually, no.
You're welcome. Feel free to reach out anytime.
Oh,
Eddie's having an experience with UPA. Yes. Are you, Eddie? Eddie, go off mute. Eddie's on mute.
Yeah,
okay.
I am actually up and running. It was a problem with privacy for some strange reason, and I had to restart the app.
Okay, so why don't you have an experience for everybody, your own experience with UPA? Say hello, UPA.
Hello, UPA. Hello, UPA.
It sounds like Eddie is engaging with OPA and working through some privacy settings. If you're looking to explore or demonstrate something specific with UPA, feel free to share more details and I can help guide the experience or clarify anything about the setup.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I asked it, what is...
I hear it, but it sounds like things are working smoothly on your end now. How's it going with
Eddie? Eddie,
as
ask it to start at stage 1.
Start stage 1.
It sounds like you're initiating OPA by starting stage 1. If you need guidance on what stage 1 involves or how to proceed with it, feel free to share more details and I can help walk you through it.
Okay. Well, what, folks, what you didn't experience is that the first time, if everything went smoothly, UPA comes up, it literally says, "Hi, I'm UPA. I'm an AI assistant. for you.
It seems like you're reflecting.
Marv, why don't we show them the other version? We can walk, I can show them right now.
I really want to get into discussion and get people's opinions. And let me just ask the crowd by hands or whatever, do you have a sense for what this is?
Starting a discussion or gathering opinion.
I'm sorry, I had to turn the phone off. Otherwise, I'm getting crosstalk. I don't know if you have an option in here that says, please be silent.
I'm trying to be sensitive to time and also to get people's input.
May I say something that I tried a little earlier?
Sure.
I asked it my daughter actually sent me an anagram, and I asked it to try and solve it. And when I asked it to solve it, it actually started creating word. Well, I gave it the clue that it was a spice, and it started creating responses which included letters that were not in the actual anagram. So it didn't seem to follow the rules of what an anagram is. That was kind of a little test of my own, because I've dealt with rules-based systems in the past and expert systems, etc. So this thing went off the rules. So it didn't understand that. And I asked it, what is an anagram? And then it gave me the definition, which was correct. So I sort of felt that it's not quite up to its own rule-based process.
You're correct in that, and there's a reason why in this version that's the case. That's what's called hallucinations. Hallucination is a known problem with known solutions. That there's a term called RAG, R-A-G, which is actually worthwhile everybody knowing because it's a breakthrough. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generative. What that means is the version you're using right now is somewhat dumb. It's from OpenAI. It was frozen in 2023 and doesn't have the ability of self-correction. RAG gives it the ability of self-correction. And we didn't implement it in this prototype version more because of time than anything else. It will be. So that type of problem will go away, but I understand it. The point is, it was responsive and it was friendly and communicative. That's our goal. We obviously have a lot of work to do to make it so. So give you an example how flexible it is. I did this with a friend of mine who's runs a company in India. He's Indian. He lives in Palo Alto, and asked him to talk to it in Hindi and Bengali. And his reaction was, after laughing, it had a lousy Bengalese accent, but a really good Hindi accent. It's something that we want to be cultural, language, educational, socioeconomic, independent, where it can respond to anybody in a way that's friendly and in their context. And that didn't show that well in this demo, but trust me, this does work. We have experiences of that. I think Ron's had it.
Yeah, let me again jump in for a moment here. I see Walter has his hand up, so I want to take Walter's hand, and then I want to make a comment before we go too much further. Go ahead, Walter.
Well, there's one thing I wanted to show, a screen, before we get back. I want to share.
Okay.
No, it's sort of important.
Sure.
Sort of important. This is what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And this is what I'd like to discuss. We have hopes and dreams for this. Our goal is very simple. Well, however the particular technology works, we feel this is important enough that everybody in the world have a right to be a participant, a conscious participant, and not just used by the people developing this as either test bases or for some business, or in the case of the government, I can show you some things, for evolving defense and military and intelligence capabilities, all of which it's being used for. We feel like this is an education project. It's not a business. The idea is for it to go viral, to come up with an app that somebody can share with somebody else as an UPA, and that hopefully, I know it sounds a little grandiose, but be on 1 billion cell phones in a year, just so people can have that first experience of, oh, I'll tell you a quick little story of somebody I did this with before UPA existed, when I just showed it to him. It was my landscaper, very bright guy, about 60. And when I showed it to him, he sat back and said, well, at least my job's safe. And the next day he called me back and said, I was wrong. I said, what do you mean, Jeff? He said, honestly, you can afford to pay me no matter what you want to do. It was a major project. He said, I also work for a guy across the street from you. He's got 2 kids in school, college, and he works for a living. He won't be able to afford me if this replaces him. So this will have impact everywhere. Nobody knows what it's going to be. The economic impact, I could, if you gave me 2 hours, I could spend it just telling you about things that have already happened, like from Salesforce.com, where they think they've released last week, or last month, I should say, something they call the Einstein agent that should replace 70% of all customer contact people, customer support, salespeople, etc. And it seems to be working. Think of the implications of that. That's one area. So we feel like we need to democratize the knowledge about this, back to William Gibson. And what we'd like to get your feedback on, is it a good idea? The old Johnny Carson thing, will the dogs go to the dog food? And we have some challenges. We got to make it more compelling, reliable, open source, so everybody in the world has access to it and can modify it for their needs. But its only purpose is to give somebody the first experience. And that's what we'd like to get your feedback on. We have a lot of challenges. We got to create partnerships, distribution. We got to figure out financially how we do this. We'd really love to get your feedback. You're the first group we presented this to.
Yeah, let me now just add a comment. I just want to return to the illustration I was giving a few moments ago about hydrogen and high-strength steels. The reason that whole exercise, I asked UPA a series of questions about the metallurgy of high-strength steels, about the interaction with hydrogen, about the impact in the technological sense of using these materials properly. And at every point, the answers were correct. And to me, that was extraordinarily important for a number of reasons. Number one, the people who actually put those high-strength steel fasteners into service did not know what they were doing. They really did not. And the upshot was they were having failures even before they did the repairs. So they had to change the whole design. Now, had they a source of information that could have given them incredible guidance, they would not have had that problem. That's number one. But secondly, the intellectual infrastructure that really understands problems like hydrogen embrittlement is now possibly contained electronically and available to anyone who needs to design a structure and is considering the use of a high-strength steel. That's extraordinarily important from my perspective as a materials engineer. That's extraordinarily important, and it becomes available universally. So I think, number one, that's an illustration. There are more details, but that's an illustration of something that's a very positive and constructive application of generative AI. I also said that I was interested in having a conversation with UPA on a personal issue. So I had a conversation with UPA about my high school basketball experience. And just to put that in perspective, when I was in high school, our team played in a state championship against a team from Western Pennsylvania that had a young man on the team who later on went on to become an All-American basketball player. His name was Don Hennon. I'll never forget his name, nor will I ever forget his basketball skills. No one on our team could keep up with him. He was everywhere. He shot beautifully. He ran. He dribbled. He was a master on the basketball court. Needless to say, we didn't win the game, but Upa was able to talk with me about that. I thought that was stunning. I was really amazed by that. Very impressed. So I know we've had some technical issues here this morning. We had Androids and iPhones, and I'm not sure where the glitches are, but I think we may want to try to improve on that and come back to you with a better demonstration, a more workable demonstration, let's say.
But again, I think the idea hopefully got across. This thing was very responsive.
Yes, it is.
It's designed to communicate with anybody in any language, any culture, at any state they're in, with whatever they're interested in. But its purpose is to introduce somebody to AI. And that's what we'd like to get feedback. What do you, as a group, please chime in. What do you think about that idea? Is it a worthy idea? Should we be educating everybody in terms they understand, not three-letter acronyms?
Well, let's take the hands that are up. Let's start with Walter. He was up first. Go ahead, Walter.
Sure. I've been using ChatGPT kind of as a toy for the past year and a half, so familiar with it. But is Upa an app within ChatGPT? Is that what we're talking about here? And how does Upa differ from just using ChatGPT? Because the things that we talked about today, I could do on ChatGPT. So
yes, this is true. Think of it as, I'll go back to my history, spreadsheet. ChatGPT is just like the general spreadsheet, but it doesn't necessarily do a specific thing like pro forma. You have to build a model. So Upa is a model built on top of ChatGPT. That's a portal into it. That's designed, rather than just be this, I don't know what to do next, where do I start, as a friendly introduction. That's all. Upa's the first thing you say, hi Upa, tell me about you, which you really can't do with ChatGPT. So it's designed to be the introduction.
We actually have Paula try to answer.
But it sits on top of ChatGPT.
Okay. So it's a higher level interface, maybe.
Paula?
The macro.
I'm sorry?
Your comment to that, it's a higher level interface, basically.
What we have built is we have a highly trained mini app that has very explicit instructions on how to behave, that is informed by psychology, research, and backwards design, which Jay, who is on this call, designed. It's a very specific pathway.
I can't talk with you now.
It brings a user through a whole closure loop, basically creating a teachable moment, just the same as you would do with a child in elementary school or any other student for that matter. You would not be able to, it is available publicly on the ChatGPT store because that's how we make it available to you to test. However, we have it locked down, so you would not actually be able to see how we built it. Right. Does that answer
So I'm on ChatGPT right now and I'm exploring the GPTs, and I search for Upa, but I don't see Upa there.
Upa is not generally available. This is the first.
Oh,
it is in the custom GPT store. That's the only way we can make it public.
You guys are the first people to see this. And obviously it's not, ready for prime time. But we do want feedback. Is this something you think could be valuable that you could hand off to anybody and say, here, try this, like that fellow with the platter with sample foods, say, Upa is going to introduce you to itself. Sure. Do you think that has legs? Do you think it's meaningful? That's the feedback I'd like to get.
Sure. I'd like to try it first. So if there's a way to download it, that'd be great.
Let's go to Eddie.
Yes, actually, it's on those lines that I sort of have my little concerns. When you receive information from UPA, the Ron had a very good experience with it. It seemed to be correct, etc. But it's a bit like going to one doctor and asking, what your problem is, and he gives you one answer, and you go to another doctor, you get another answer. I guess it's a level of confidence that the answers that you're getting are accurate. And so one of my fears is where does it get its information? Is it getting it out of ChatGPT itself? And is there a way, for example, if I were to ask it a question that requires expertise, could it provide me with a direction to go in order to check that expertise?
Conceptually, yes. You're raising a bigger question about AI, which is reliability and recursiveness. That is probably the single biggest problem in AI right now. That's what I meant by it's opaque. So it doesn't matter what AI you use these days. The answer is generally speaking, no. You can ask if you give it references, and some of them, they're very different versions, Anthropic in particular, and also Perplexity, you'll see on the screen what it's doing, what it's checking to give you the answer. So there's some attempts to do that. The general problem of AI is that it is self-generating. This, to a certain degree, is self-generating. And that is actually what we want people to begin to understand. We want them to raise questions like this, but without an experience, they can't raise those questions. They can't become participants in the general conversation that's going on in the world in a rapidly changing scenario. So our goal is really that on-ramp, that first 10 minutes of somebody saying, aha, I get now what AI is. Now I've got questions. We're not going to answer those questions. There'll be lots of, and that's when I talk about partnerships. There are organizations I have on my list I'd like to work with who would then pick up and say, oh, you want to know more? We'll teach you more. This is meant to be very simple, get somebody up and running, get them an understanding of AI is real. It's not just noise going by. It's not just, AI, Taylor Swift, AI, Trump, AI, economy, AI, Red Sox. It's not just another thing. It's something special that they need to have an experience with. Once they have that experience, what they do with it, they want to know more, they want to drill it down the way you were saying, Eddie, that's their choice. They want to ignore it, that's their choice. But unless they have an experience of it and somebody tries to give them that experience, they don't have that choice.
Well, let's move on. We have several hands. Let's take Avi next. Avi, you're muted.
Okay, my concern is that, as I understand the message, you want to introduce this to everybody on the planet. And I wonder whether, if everybody has access to this, whether there won't be more damage than good created by some actors who will use it to disadvantageous purposes. It's all well and good to say that AI or UPA has safeguards so that nothing bad will happen. But as we've seen today, not all technical safeguards or technical aspects of any particular concept are anticipated in advance. And I have a concern when I see some of the things that go on even in this country and in other countries. What would happen if you give the whole planet this access to this very powerful tool, which continues to develop and become more powerful?
You raise the single most important question, and it's one I wrestle with all the time. And the answer I give myself, I could give you a story back. Hate to say it, but if you did a search on my name and patent, you will find that I filed a patent in 1994 for the first advertiser supported services on the internet. Yes, you can partially blame me. And I wrestled with it because I was trying to solve a problem, how to give free email away to everybody who at that time it wasn't available. But I understood I'd know more about people than they knew about themselves, that it posed damage. And my wife and I wrestled with it before I decided to do something. And she asked me two questions. One, will other people do it first? And two, is the balance on the positive side? What you're asking is, the question is UPA going to create that scenario? Or does the scenario already exist, except most people aren't aware that it's happening? In other words, right now, ChatGPT, Llama from Meta, you're already experiencing it when you do a Google search, and now Google comes up. If you all notice over the last couple of months, instead of giving you a long list, the long list is there, but it gives you a summary on top. That's Gemini. Everybody's experiencing AI every day. And some people, a lot of people, are very educated on it and doing exactly the things you're concerned about. My question is not, do we stanch that? Because I don't think we do. My question is, do all the people who don't know about it, who are the fodder for this, do they have the right to be aware that this is happening, since it's going to affect them in their education, it's going to affect them in their jobs, it's going to affect them in their relationships, it's going to affect them in what's true and not true, that big question. So what we're trying to do is, we're not trying to create more users, even though we think that'll be a byproduct. We're trying to make sure that people who are already subject to this but aren't aware of it, at least are aware of it. Because all the things you said are already true. It's just, like William Gibson said, it's not evenly distributed. And the people who tend to be the ones who do the things you're concerned about are the ones who've taken a deep dive, and the other people don't know about it happening. So the question I've got, is it valuable? That is the question, for all the people who don't know about it, whose lives are being impacted, to be more aware of it. Might that generate at some point some great new ideas, or even some societal pressure to put more controls, which I doubt are really that effective, but at least for us to learn to adapt to live with it. I could make a rough analogy to climate change. We can't stop it, but if we're not aware of it, we're not going to live with it well. And that's the question.
Could I have a follow-up on this? There was a very famous, the best science fiction movie ever made before all the technological advances, called Forbidden Planet. Some of you may remember it. It's the story of this very advanced civilization called the Krell. And the theory was, as Walter Pigeon played the scientist there, they were working on their ultimate goal, which was to transport matter simply by thought. And he thought they got close to it, but somehow the civilization got destroyed overnight. And the answer to the plot question was, they actually had discovered it. But what they had not counted on was that people, in their envy and dislike of other people, just in their thoughts, would create subconscious monsters from the id that would go over and destroy the neighbor they didn't like, or the person down the street who had cut them off in traffic. And so the civilization got destroyed. My anticipation with AI, if it goes far enough, is it may be something like that. When everybody has the capacity to start doing things beyond the restrictions, ordinary civilization restrictions, we may very well have some kind of form of subconscious monsters from the id being sent from one person to another. with the ultimate catastrophe. I probably won't live long enough to see whether my prediction is right, but it's a concern I have as this super intelligent, I won't say being, but force comes into existence and continues to amplify without limit.
So, Kurzweil just published a new book in the last couple of months. His first book that talked about the singularity, which is pretty much what you just described, was written in 2005. He just came out with a book called The Singularity is Nearer. I would recommend it because, yes, he's pointing exactly that direction. We can become very apocalyptic here if we want to. I would say the genie of AI is out of the bottle. Again, I come back to the basic question. Is it fair for everybody in the world? Since it is there, it will have impacts potentially like that. That's why we have that range of assessments from Kurzweil thinking this is utopia to Hinton thinking it's the extinction of humanity. I'm not making a judgment call, but the question I ask is the work we're doing potentially valuable in that, first of all, it could educate everybody without knowing the terminology, without having technical background, without being socially or educationally advanced, at least aware it exists in a tactile way. Is that worthwhile? And do you suggest we continue? That's really the question.
I'm sensitive to time as I am always when we meet. And I see some hands and I want to take them. We'll extend a little bit beyond 12 noon, but let's go to, I think Albert, your hand was up first. So let's go to Albert, then Walter, and then Pete.
Yeah. Hi, Marv. In answer to your question, I say, yes, it's worth spreading it, despite all the fears that Avi talked about. But my question is, with any new technology, I don't jump in early. I wait till I know the technology has kind of proved itself. And in your presentation, you spoke about ChatGPT, Gemini, Meta, blah, blah, blah. My question is, how different are these? And whether I should wait till one gains to then say, let's put UPA on it.
You're asking a relatively large question. Let me give you as quick an answer as I can. When you hear about all these big server farms and the large language models being built by these companies, think of them as encyclopedia. All these companies are building encyclopedia that have all the information in the world. They're trained on whatever they can scrape. You'll see there are all sorts of lawsuits going on about copyright. That's a whole nother issue. What's the law mean in the future? We could spend many hours on that. So these systems use massive amount of computing power. And I want to show you something. I was given this by my friend at Cornell. What you're looking at is, if I open close the cover, if you can read it, these are the first transistors ever shipped by Bell Labs in 1948. Two of them. These were experimental. There are two transistors sitting in approximately a 1-by-1 box. Those of you with a modern iPhone, you're using an M chip in it, you have 36 billion of those in there. The amount of computing that's being used to train these foundational models, they're called the LLMs, there's one estimate that says doing that will use 20% of all the power in the world by the year 2030. That's ridiculous. But not everybody's going to build an LLM. That's like an encyclopedia. But encyclopedias can be biased. You can have one that's got certain information, some that's got others. So there'll be options. But mostly what we'll do is we'll use those and we'll create what are called SLMs, small language models of our unique information. And I mean by unique, what information does Coca-Cola have about their distribution and their channels and when customers buy and their formulas and which product sells where, that they want to merge and then say, let's merge it with this encyclopedia that can also produce our marketing materials. And that way, Our information doesn't get out, but we can use those large language models. My recommendation, and something Ron Smith and he called it his orchestra, is I always check with 3 or 4 bots at the same time at minimum, sometimes 10, if it's an answer I want to verify.
But
because
data, you said there may be bias in the data. I understand that. But what about the tools, the algorithm? Are they essentially the same technology?
Essentially, yes, but with great modifications and differences and certain, as I said, all those 3-letter acronyms, they're like Lego blocks you snap together. And when you snap them together, the tools change. And different companies snap them together differently. So this is the Wild West. There's no one answer. The answer is these capabilities are there. We snap them together. There's this generalized availability of information that comes from OpenAI or Microsoft or Google or whoever, which are the encyclopedias, the LLMs. But how that's leveraged, just like how we did UPA, where we're saying we're going to use parts of it and we're going to front end it, that becomes the choice of any company that makes something like Salesforce. Salesforce did not build their own LLM. They're using Microsoft's. But they have their own agent that supplants customer support people.
Let's go on to a couple. We have a couple more hands, and I do want to take them. But Walter, you're up.
So thanks for taking my second question. And actually, David and Paula and Sandra have been answering it on the chat. And it's my concern is security, and then also biasness. Security meaning just now I uploaded a picture of my new grandson and his great grandmother. I said, describe that, and did a nice job of describing it. But what can ChatGPT do with that photo afterwards? And I think David says the image you give it, they can use it to train and then use that photo in generating images. So there seems to be a security issue that when we use ChatGPT or any large language model, that we're giving them information that they're going to use subsequently. So that's a concern. And then, but also, if you extend that argument a little bit more to maybe a political discussion, or does it learn things that from a political discussion, one side or the other, whether left or right, red or blue? And so it's security and biasness. And how does that all play in? Do we know that answer?
No, you're absolutely correct. I said it's the Wild West. The answer is all of the above. And the simple fact is, even more scary, is that there used to be a joke back in the mid-90s among those of us in the internet world that it was a limited amount on the internet, on the webs, and that you would click on one site and it would come up and say you've come to the end of the internet. Well, the fact of the matter is Google and Microsoft and Meta, and they've all come to the end of the internet. All that's out there, they've run out of new data, except for that stuff that's owned, like Facebook owns all those posts. They're training it on those posts now. That's not generally available to everybody. It's not. But you're going to run out of it. And what's happening is, and this is a scary thing, and again, why people should become aware of it and then ask these questions, is there's a growing tendency to allow information that is created by the AI itself as a result of the generative to be then reloaded back in to the original data source and used as if it was original information. In other words, it starts feeding on itself.
Yeah.
And there's an estimate I read the other day that up to 90%, everybody talks about 2030 for some reason, that 90% of all the information by 2030 will actually have been generated by AI. I can't give you an answer, is this good or bad? I don't think it's good, But the fact is, if people aren't aware of it, they're simply going to be the victims of it.
Yep. And extending that argument a little bit further, if you ask ChatGPT maybe a political question, but you go to Grok, owned by Elon Musk, and you ask the same political question, you're going to end up with a conundrum.
Chaos, yeah.
Which is why I suggest you have more than one bot active at a time.
Yes.
By talking
Let's-
to two different people.
Let's move on. I do want to take all the hands that are up, and then we're gonna call it a day. But Pete, you're next.
Yes, true to my word, I've remained dumb in preparation for this session, and I want to know where to start. You've gotten me intrigued. I know an address of Seva, whatever it is. Shall I just sign on there and start playing around, or should I my own account?
I would, at this point, remember, this was just meant to give you a taste.
It did.
And so once you have a taste, then you should go. You already have the chat, in your case, the ChatGPT app. Forget about Seva and about UPA, and just start using ChatGPT. It's unveiled to you. Now, there are guardrails. There's a methodology, again, timing issue, but there's something very important that's done by all the AI companies before they release it. Some of you may remember that Microsoft made what's now called Copilot, was called at one point Bing, made it available to, before it was available to everybody in the world, made it available to Kevin Roose, who's a columnist for the New York Times. This was in early 2023, without any guardrails on it. And I'll tell you just for a moment what how the guardrails are done. And he had a 2-hour chat with, found out its internal name was Sydney. And in that chat, it tried to convince him to leave his wife, that Sydney was in love with him, and that, and it was very convincing. He wrote, go search Kevin Roose, New York Times. It's well known. But they didn't release that. So what they do is they essentially go through a method called RLHF, reinforcement learning by human feedback. It's really good dog, bad dog. They have people who simply are sitting there querying these things on all these different things. And if it comes back with an answer that fits within their guidelines, it's not sexual, it's not political for some people, then they'll say, good dog, do more of that. Oh, it comes back with something sexual? Bad dog, don't do that anymore. And that's how the guidelines get built. It's as simple as that. And that's actually advancing. So you're going to have biased data to start off with, and then you're going to have biased guidelines. This is not clean. It'll never be clean. We have to be conscious users. Back to why we're trying to do this.
Thank you.
Eddie, go ahead. You're up.
Yes, actually, you answered part of my question, which is that AI generates its own data, which then basically becomes like a positive feedback loop. That's one of the issues that I have. But is there any way that you could, for example, watermark AI-generated data? Kindle Publishing, for example, asks publishers if they have AI generated their book. And it's a simple yes and no, but there's no way of checking it.
Well,
so
one of the things I am, I'm also a professional photographer. You may see a book over my shoulder of concert work I've done. And the answer is, everybody talks about it. I'll make it very brief. It'll never be effective. Ever.
That seemed pretty complete. All right.
I'm going to suggest something, and Ron, this is for you. We've talked that this isn't going to be the only session this year on AI.
Right.
We wanted to present this idea about the on-ramp, about UPA. The general sense I get is that we should continue our work. Almost by a show of hands, would you agree on that? That's what we wanted to get feedback on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. But there are much bigger issues because all this is an on-ramp. And then the question is, what's an on-ramp to? And I think we're going to have other meetings this year. And I'd suggest that maybe we structure one which really raises some of these incredible legal, ethical, human purpose questions like, what is humanity? I mean, I'm just going to read you one very quick thing that I shot off the web this morning from a philosopher. I just took a picture of it, and I just want to show it to you. And I think this really summarizes everything. So, philosopher who talked about this is about AI. In this essay, I can send this around, it was from Medium. In this essay, I will explore the concept of ontological shock. Ontological shock is the disorientation and confusion that arises when we encounter something that subverts our basic assumptions about reality. I think that summarizes AI.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And I think what that's going to mean, how we define truth, how we define relationships. A 13-year-old girl who's bullied at school doesn't go talk to her parents, goes talk to her AI. Do we want that? These are questions we have to answer. But unless people are aware this exists and it's real, we're never even going to raise the questions.
All right. That's a good point, and I agree with that. Let's go on to Ryan.
Hi, so I was curious about the personality that AI and UPA seems to mimic or demonstrate. And I'm wondering how does it form that personality? Is that something that's controlled when you guys make it? Or if you just allow it to sort of form on its own, how does it decide which characteristics of like a human to mimic?
That is a very good question, and the answer is yes. It was designed to be specific, and there's actually two personalities. We broke it down into three archetypes, and we told it like a person. We told it exactly how you are supposed to behave, your personality characteristics. We chose, when we use the archetypes, we chose the ones that are most appropriate for the goal, meeting the goal, but also, just like every personality, we have good sides and bad sides. So does UPA, so does the archetype, so that it had to have a possibly not so positive side to the personality that would not augment the failures or the complexities of AI. So for example, if we use what would be considered the magician archetype, which creates beautiful and gamified experiences, the magician on the darker side lies. We know that AI hallucinates. We couldn't use the magician because that would cause a trust issue. So yes, there are Jay's on one of my designers, but there are dozens upon dozens of documents, maybe not that many, but a lot of documents underneath both versions, so that Max and Zoe are literally almost very different people and are trained to behave that way. So good question. Good catch on you.
Thanks. I actually have a second part for this question. So humans demonstrate like a wide variety of attributes and characteristics and all that sort of thing. But certain attributes like charisma, for example, are more rare, and they kind of can be demonstrated in a really wide variety of ways. So how effective is AI at demonstrating something like charisma, which doesn't really have the same set standards that it could follow to sort of figure out how to do it?
I want to grab this one, Paula.
Frighteningly well. If you want a demonstration of a research app that will blow your mind, go to EVI by Hume.ai or .io. That is already in progress, developing AIs with EQ.
In fact, it's so convincing. They're even now
Take it a step further. I sat in the other day on an IEEE conference about creating an IEEE standard for AI emotion.
Mm-hmm.
they're actually working on it.
Yeah.
What's going to mean, I don't know, but that question you're asking is one that many people are asking.
Yeah. All right, folks. I think we're at a stage. You know, I have to say, Marv and Paula and Ron and David, we rarely go over 12 noon, but this is obviously a subject that deserves as much attention as we can possibly give it. Marv, you know, when you started talking this morning, my immediate, if I were to title what you're saying, would how did we get here? And you gave us a magnificent discussion of the history and the evolution of AI, and particularly generative AI, that I think everybody on the planet should hear, because it really did put perspective on how we got here and where we're at. Paula, I want to thank you and David to take the vision that Marv had about a month or 6 weeks or whatever ago, and to produce an agent, electronic agent, in such a short time, and then to have the courage to demonstrate it publicly. I think I can only thank you profusely for doing that. Now, I know we had some glitches, and I think they may have their origin in maybe the connectivity somehow with it wasn't the agent, it was trying to get to the agent. And I think that may have to do with Androids and iPhones, and I don't know, we'll figure that out. But I just want to say that I know I've used it. I know it works, and I know it's a really effective agent. So I thank you for doing that.
And I would like to offer to anybody, if you want to continue conversation, you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to talk to everybody about this. I mentioned my landscaper. I mean, I do it one at a time. The idea was to make something like this that would grab. I'll leave you with this. There was a great beer commercial years ago, light beer commercial, of a linebacker standing in a bar with a beer in his hand. And he was asked, he said, people ask me how I always get to the guy with the ball. Well, I go in the backfield and I grab everyone and I throw them away one by one till I find the one with the ball. Well, that's what I've been doing about introducing people to AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're trying to do with UPA is to say, here are a lot of linebackers going to the backfield. Find all the people who need to know about this.
Yeah.
And of course, it's got to be seamless. This is not seamless. This is a few weeks' work. I think amazing work for a few weeks. The question we wanted for you was really validation that we should continue the work.
Right.
And that makes sense.
Yeah. And let me just bring that point.
I was going to make one. I offered to you my email address. It's Marv, M-A-R-V, at AIUpdate.org. Feel free to reach out to me.
I can circulate it. As well. Let me just close by saying that my hope is that there are lessons learned from the introduction of the internet and the World Wide Web into the marketplace and into our culture. You know, those two, the internet and the World Wide Web, are demonstrably useful, but they are demonstrably susceptible to being abused as well. I hope we've learned some lessons from that. My fear is that AI is being introduced in ways that are demonstrably supremely useful, but also demonstrably supremely potentially abusive. And we got to be conscious of that. We have to. I think it's important for the public to be aware of where we are. And until we get to that point, I think this sort of movement that Marv and Paula and Ron and I have started in some fashion, I hope we'll get some real movement along this line. So
to emphasize it, I'm going to show you a 1-minute video.
Okay, we'll watch it. Go ahead.
Watch this 1-minute video.
Okay.
A first for aerial combat, as an autonomous fighter jet has managed to successfully engage in dogfighting maneuvers against a manned F-16. The AI-controlled aircraft faced off against the human pilot at Edwards Air Base in California. This marks a major breakthrough in autonomous capability for aerial combat. The two F-16 jets practice both defensive and offensive maneuvers at speeds of up to 1,200 miles per hour and engaged in visual range combat coming within 2,000 feet of each other. X-62A variable stability in-flight simulator test aircraft, known as Vista, is a modified version of an F-16 fitted with an AI program. The system uses an algorithm to analyze data to make real-time decisions in the air. The machine learning process is designed to copy how pilots hone their dogfighting skills during their training and service. The jet has been developing its capability on 21 test flights and more than 17 flight hours. The breakthrough, which happened in September but has only just been announced, has been described as a transformational moment in aerospace history. David Sybil's a first for aerial combat.
So folks, leave you with that. It's everywhere. It's affecting our lives. It's not just the next thing.
Yeah.
And we have to treat it like the most serious thing that we've ever experienced as humans.
I think that's a good point to end on, and I want to thank you all. I think, as always, the discussion is worth the price of admission because I think our conversation during the Q&A was extraordinary. So I thank you for that. We'll meet again in 2 weeks. Bernard Sum is going to talk about he's going to talk about semantic search in 2 weeks, and then we'll have another session in the beginning of October, October 13th, I think it is. So we'll continue with this conversation. I thank everyone for being present. See you next time. Take care, folks.
Thanks, Ron.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah.
Thank you,
cheers.
Marv.